Hello, in this topic 2, you will learn about the banking operation. Before we proceed, these are the learning outcomes for this topic. At the end of this topic, you should be able to identify legal cases relevant with banking operation, identify the characteristics and types of negotiable instrument, and explain protections available to and liabilities/negligence of collecting or paying bank. Now let us start with subtopic 2.1, which is the negotiable instruments. A negotiable instrument is a formal legal document, which contains a legal obligation to pay money, that possesses the attributes of negotiability. It is transferable from one person to another with or without endorsement. The holder can sue in his or her own name. The transferee who takes it in good faith and for value obtains a good title to it even though his transferor had a defective title or no title at all. Examples of negotiable instruments are bills of exchange, promissory notes, and checks. According to Bill of Exchange Act 1949, Bill of Exchange is an unconditional order in writing, addressed by one person to another, signed by the person giving it, requiring the person to whom it is addressed to pay on demand or at a fixed or determinable future time, certain sum in money to or to the order of a specified person or to the bearer. On the other hand, promissory note is an unconditional promise in writing made by one person to another signed by the maker engaging to pay on demand or at a fixed or determinable future time, a sum certain in money to or to the order of a specified person or bearer. Moreover, a check is an unconditional order in writing addressed by one person to another who must be a banker, signed by the person, drawer, giving it, requiring the banker to pay on demand, a sum certain in money, to the order of a specified person, payee, or to bearer. Let us discuss further about check. There are three parties to a check include the drawer who draws a check, drawee bank whom the check is drawn and a payee whom the check is drawn payable. Some points to consider when drawing or issuing check include the check must be an unconditional order. It cannot be changed or altered. It must be in writing which includes print, using printer. It must be signed. It is important that the amount on the check must be stated in words tally with that in figures to meet the criteria as sum certain in money. It must be dated. Moreover, bank will not pay check with material alterations such as date, amount, words, and figures, crossing, order to bearer and payee's name. Three types of check dates include ante-dated, which refers to a check that have a date before the date of issue/today's date, post-dated, which refers to a check that have a date later than the date of issue. Post-dated check is not payable on demand and thus cannot fall within definition of check, and a stale or out of date, which is a check that have a date more than 6 months from date of issue. These are some pros and cons of a check. Advantages of check include it can be issued for any amount subject to availability of funds, more secured than cash, can be stopped if lost, can easily send through the post/mail, and can easily transferred between parties. The disadvantages of check include shops will normally reject checks as mode of payment, susceptible to theft and fraud. A person accepting a check may find that it is dishonored or rejected by paying bank, and it is less easy use than cash. Next, let us talk about the differences between bill of exchange and check. The bill of exchange can be drawn upon any person, but a check must be drawn upon a banker only. Bill of exchange can be made payable at a fixed or determinable future, but a check is payable on demand. A bill of exchange must be presented for payment when due or the drawer will be discharged, but a check can be presented for payment within 6 months from the date issued. Bill of exchange cannot be crossed, but a check may be crossed. Bill of exchange required to be endorsed before presented, but a check does not need to be endorsed for payment. A bill of exchange when accepted, the drawee is primarily liable to the holder, but for a check, the drawer is liable if the check is rejected. Check can be open and crossed. An open check is an uncrossed / without a crossing. It needs not go through any bank account. The payment can be made directly over the bank counter. A crossed check has to be paid into a bank account. The payment cannot be made directly over the bank counter. There are two types of a crossed check. A general crossed check has two parallel transverse lines drawn across the face of the check, with or without the words and company or not negotiable written between or near the line. On the other hand, special crossing specifies the name of a banker, with or without the words not negotiable. In this case, the fund must be banked into that particular bank only. There are two types of special crossing, including not negotiable crossing and account payee crossing. Now let us move on to the next subtopic 2.2, which is the collection of check. The collecting bank has a duty to exercise reasonable care to collect check. The primary tasks of a collecting bank include delivering a check for payment in a timely manner. On the day it becomes aware of the décisionnaire, to mail a notification of décisionnaire to its customer, and to be responsible to its client if a check clearing system delay occurs. The bank could be able to make a claim against the clearing system in turn. There are 5 protection of a collecting bank. The collecting bank has a statutory protection, which is a protection given to the bank using the laws formed. According to the law, the collecting banker cannot be blamed or sued by the true owner of a check when the collecting banker had performed its duty of collecting checks in good faith and without negligence. Next, collecting bank has a defense of estoppel. It is a protection to the collecting banker as a result of proofs gathered / customers' pre-actions acted as proof / line of facts. The collecting banker cannot be blamed or sued by the true owner of a check when the collecting banker can prove that the customer had said or done something which led the collecting banker to believe on reasonable grounds that it would be permitted for the bank to collect the checks concerned for the account of customer. Next, the collecting bank also has a defense of contributory negligence. It is a protection to the collecting banker due to customer's contributory mistake. The collecting banker cannot be blamed or sued by the true owner of a check when the collecting banker can prove that the customer failed to take reasonable care for his own safety related to checks against foreseeable risk. The collecting bank also has a defense of holder in due course. It is a protection to the collecting banker by becoming a holder in due course. The collecting banker would acquire a good title to the check if it became a holder in due course by giving value for the check in good faith. Lastly, collecting bank may get indemnity from customers. Customer indemnified the collecting banker for any wrongdoing or liabilities incurred in the reasonable performance of the duty. Normally, collecting banker requires customer to sign an indemnity form. There are 4 liabilities or negligence of collecting bank. Firstly, collecting bank may fails to obtain an introducer's reference when opening an account for customer. This is whereby the collecting bank can be sued if it opens current account for a customer that is not known to the bank, or the bank did not obtain reference from its existing customer before opening current account for a new customer. It is considered as collecting bank's negligent because thief or scammer might take advantage over such negligence to steal money or do fraud. Secondly, the collecting bank may fails to check legalities of the documents with relevant authorities. This is whereby the collecting bank can be sued if it did not check the legalities of related documents with relevant authorities if the bank is proven to be aware of suspicious elements such as forged identification card or forged signature. Next, the collecting bank may to make inquiries when customer paid in third-party check. Finally, the collecting bank may fails to make inquiries where the customer is drawing check on a principal's account to reduce an advance owed to the bank. This is whereby the collecting bank can be sued if it did not questions the customer's action of drawing check on an account with insufficient balance to reduce advance owed to the bank, such as overdraft of the same. Next, let us move on to topic 2.3, the payment and counterman of check. Another one of the primary functions of a bank is the payment of checks, paying bank, drawn by his customer on him. The bank may make payment in 2 ways: payment of cash over the counter against open check and payment against open or crossed checks through the clearing system or bank into customer's account. The paying bank has a protection against the payment of check with forged document. This is whereby paying bank cannot be sued if the bank pays a check with a forged or unauthorized endorsement, if it is proven that the bank acts in good faith and had follows standard banking procedures in dealing with the payment of check. The bank acts in good faith means that the bank is honestly not aware of any error / defect in the check paid. It is also assumed that the bank have paid the check in due course. A check is also deemed to be paid in the ordinary course of business if bank follows a standard practice of banking as regard to payment of checks. Next, the paying bank has protection against payment of a crossed check. This is whereby paying bank cannot be sued if the bank pays a crossed check to a payee that is actually had defective title/no title to the check, if it is proven that the bank pays the crossed check in good faith, without negligence, and according to the crossing. It provides that a drawee bank paying a crossed check is entitled to the same rights, and to be placed in the same position as if payment has been made to the true owner if the drawee bank pays to bank if it is crossed generally, or to the bearer to whom it is crossed if it crossed specially in good faith and without negligence. The paying has protection against payment of check without endorsement or irregular endorsement. This is whereby paying bank cannot be sued if bank pays a check which is not endorsed or irregularly endorsed, if it is proven that the bank acts in good faith and had follows standard banking procedures in dealing with the payment of check. The bank has protection against check that was endorsed but the presenter is unknown to bank. This is whereby paying bank cannot be sued if the bank pays a check whereby endorsed but the presenter is unknown to bank, if it is proven that the bank takes all the necessary steps in examining the check and identifying. There are several liabilities or negligence of a paying bank. The bank is liable for damages of check wrongly debited to a customer's account. The bank will be responsible because the true owner did not receive the money that's supposed to be banked into his/her account. The bank is liable for pay-stopped payment check. The bank will be responsible if the bank is aware that the check has been stopped or received notice to countermand but then failed to follow the order. The bank is liable for paying a post-dated check. The bank will be responsible if the bank is aware of the alteration or mistake made by the customer on the check but still pay the check. The bank is liable for paying a check with signature forged. The bank will be responsible if the bank is aware of the signature on the check was forged but the bank still pay the check. The bank wrongfully dishonours a check. The bank will be responsible if it did not pay the check which supposedly has no problem to be proceeded. Counterman of check refers to the cancellation of check due to several reasons. Under Section 75, the duty and authority of a bank to pay a check drawn on him are determined by counterman of payment and notices of the customer's death. Customer can counterman of payments for several reasons such as lost, stolen or failed contract. There are several steps a client should take to make a stop payment. The instruction should be in writing. Counterman of payment may be done by telephone but must be followed by letter soonest possible. The written instruction should be delivered to the banker as soon as possible in time for the bank to take effective action. This is highlighted in the case of Baines versus National Provincial Bank Limited. The instruction should be accurate as far as the particulars of the check are concerned. This is stressed on the case of Westminster Bank versus Hilton. The instruction is not effective until it actually received by the bank. Bank to acknowledge receipt of the letter. This is highlighted in the case of Curtis versus London City and Midland Bank Limited.